We're good to go, Chairman.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
Call the meeting of the Infrastructure Committee to order. Roll call. Lavallee, Schulz, Perkins, and Gorman are all here. And Lisa Haderlein has joined us for this evening. Public comments. There's no one from the public here, so I'll skip that. And the next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes for January 13th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Item 5 on the agenda is sewer water capital improvement project requests. Turn that over to you, Deb.
Thank you. So I provided a memo a couple weeks ago regarding this topic, and basically we have quite a bit of fund reserve in our capital improvement fund for our sewer water tap-ons. That's courtesy of the DCEO grant that we received for the wastewater plant, as well as significant funds from building permits that we haven't gotten over the past several years that have been coming in based on the new construction residential that we're doing here in town, and significant amount of those permits go towards this account for tap-on fees and other infrastructure projects, obviously because the new construction tasks the system. So we use this fund for maintenance and projects that are outside of the Fund 70 budget that we'll be talking about on Saturday. So with the funds that we have, we need to decide on some projects that we'd like to do with them. I'm also requesting, and you'll see as we go through the spreadsheet that I gave you, a transfer out and into our sewer water cash account to help balance that budget on Saturday for some things that Mike and Rob would like to do out of that fund. So we can just start by looking at this spreadsheet. I started with the account balance as of the 31st of January, which is highlighted in yellow at the top. We already have some projects committed from this account that haven't been spent yet, that being the lead line inventory program grant. We still have a balance remaining of $20,228. Remembering that we did receive a partial grant for that of $40,000, and we will be getting we received $20,000 of the 40. We'll be getting another $20,000 reimbursed once we spend down those funds and I submit those to the state. That's a yearly submission, so that won't be done until next year. So as of right now, the $40,000 we're working off of, actually we have received $20,000. And then the lead line loan application program, we also voted to have CBEL go ahead with that contract. That will be $23,000 that we've committed that we've not spent. We have the well 9 generator. CBEL is working on getting that prepared. They've already done the engineering and the plan review, and it's getting ready to go to bid next month. Is that correct?
This month.
This month, okay. So we still have a balance. We've paid them a little bit, but we still have a balance on that of $23,924. And then we'll have the actual fabrication and installation cost, which is estimated to be around $550,000. $325,000 of that is coming from ARPA. I don't know if you remember correctly, we were trying to get a grant for this, and that grant did not pan out. And we voted earlier in the year that if we weren't able to get the grant funds, we would dedicate the remainder of the ARPA funds to this project. So that leaves us with $224,300 that we'll need from this account to fulfill that obligation. I've also left 1 year of the loan and bonds that we have for the IEPA, and we still have one bond and one land expansion loan out. As a reserve, we can make that payment for a year if we needed to. And then another unforeseen reserve of $500,000 for anything that might occur that we would need projects for. or we need cash for projects. Something like, I always go back to when the well dropped and we ended up needing $300,000-400,000 that we didn't have in the budget. Something like that, we would have that $500,000 reserve to work with if we had unforeseen repairs. And then the final transfer out or final obligation would be transfer out to sewer water cash. We'll talk more about this on Saturday, but I'd like to reserve roughly $215,000 for that should you folks decide to proceed with the way we have that budget worked out when we talk on Saturday. That leaves a balance remaining of $729,797 to work with for projects that the two experts in the field here are going to talk about, some of their suggestions, and then some other things that are needed that we could use out of this fund or this account. Any questions on the financial part?
The transfer out thing is the mentioned part that you put in your memo, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when we go over the budget, and actually, if you want to talk about it, since you're not going to be there, if you want to step in, or even after the meeting, I can just show you what we're thinking on that.
Okay.
But you'll see that in the spreadsheets that I gave you on Monday, too.
All right, thank you.
No other questions? I guess we'll just move into the ask.
Rob, do you want to start with the I&I?
I can start with the I&I. So one of the things that we still need to kind of figure out is where our inflow and infiltration is coming from. There are certain scenarios where we can use lift stations for areas where the drainage basin goes into a lift station. We can monitor how many hours it's running, how often it's running, and how that correlates with rain. The one thing that we don't know is where it's just gravity. So in areas like Alderman Gorman's neighborhood, that's just gravity. Over by TrueServe, just gravity. So this proposes, I asked Seabell and who they would basically use, and they said that the RJN group does a lot of contract work for them. And they come highly recommended from a few different engineering firms. They gave us an estimate to place flow meters into 4 different basins or 4 areas to see if we can identify where the majority of the I&I is coming from. So that's a good start. You know, initially, we're going to sit down and go over, whoever wins this, we're going to have to put this out to some sort of a formal bid or RFP. But whoever wins this will have to decide where we put them, what the best thing or what the best place for these is currently. Right now, I have identified stuff that I would think, including down by TrueServe, the downtown district, Alderman Gorman's neighborhood, and one other sort of in that same vein. Areas basically that are old infrastructure, have old roofs, or, where downtown that area, we're going to make assumptions that there's a lot of cross connections from gutters, and old infrastructure there. I have a feeling that we're going to see certain attributes of this light up like a light switch when it comes to rain events. But until we know where that's coming from, it's just kind of shooting in the dark. If we do this will tell us where we need to do the next step. So this is taking an area that's a broader brush and going, all right, this is where we're going to focus, and then from there we can decide on what works best at that point. Do we do smoke testing? Do we do sewer lining? And sort of this helps paint the picture of where we're going to go with this information, but we need to kind of know where this information is first. So what RJN Group proposed was 4 flow meters. The city would purchase the flow meters, and the RJN Group would do the upkeep on them. If we decide to use these anywhere in the future, rental was, I think, somewhere around $100,000, but to purchase them, it's about $140,000. And that's everything. That's them taking care of the maintenance, everything like that. So if we wanted to use these in the future, we wouldn't have to pay the rental fee over and over again. And since we have a few basins and we have known issues, this would be the way to go.
So Rob, just curious, so this would happen before the Delta project,
The
Delta Institute
Yeah,
project?
that's the water,
Because that's about infiltration too.
correct.
Okay.
This When we went that route, we were assuming this wasn't going to be done. They would incorporate this in.
Okay, so they'd incorporate this, the data. Okay, thank you.
Is there any reason why these things would age out? In other words, that become old technology, or?
I think it's all relative. I'm sure there's new models coming out every year. However, this is a flow meter, and the equipment is something that they've been reusing. You know, essentially, we're going to be, if we rent it, we're going to be renting equipment that they purchased years ago and putting in. That's really a function of what this body would like to do.
How is it monitored?
It's all wireless. And they do, it basically, it all reports back, and it'll be, I think, in this contract, it's something like a 5-minute interval. And it has flow meters in the flow. It also has depth gauges, so that if there is a surcharge in the system, that it'll be able to measure that surcharge and how much goes through. And then also in part of the RFP that I've started putting together today, it'd be like if there's a back charge, if it backflows, that it can register that there was a backflow or a reverse flow, so maybe it's coming from somewhere else and not that basin, but it's multifaceted. This is just sitting down with RJN, their representative to begin with. It was quite impressive because he could do day by day, hour by hour, like here's how much rain we got. Look at, here's everything lighting up, here's this catch basin lighting up, here's this lighting up, and then this is how fast it dissipates, and, this is how they do certain things. And even going on to the smoke testing, down the road where, it's gonna be a lot of laterals, a lot of gutters, a lot of unforeseens. So this is just the first step.
So this is just, it's going to say, okay, this basin with this flow meter, we're getting this much excess water.
Right.
Than we would expect with just
Correct.
normal conditions. Okay, thanks.
So out of all the things that we're going to be doing, this, if you had all the money in the world, this would still be the first one you'd want to do?
Correct. This is, because without this, we could throw, darts at a map and go, yeah, this area needs to be lined, or this area needs to be lined. But one of the biggest problems we have is inflow. That's going to be gutters, breaks in the pipe, bad joints. That's really what we're looking for.
Well, we said we wanted to get started on some of these kinds of projects, infrastructure beyond roads.
So this
makes sense to me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. This is a part of our strategic vision. And Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we had heavy rain, all that water's going right into the sewer system. It's sometimes maxing out our brand-new wastewater treatment plant, which means then we have to dump off into the pond.
Correct.
If we can identify it and try to eliminate it.
Or my
That would-
basement.
What's that?
Or my basement.
Or your basement. That is true. That's one of our runoffs.
Thanks for the storage.
Doesn't go in mine, but thank you, Charlie, for
So-
taking mine.
So long-term, it'll help identify it, eliminate it as much as possible, or at least identify the area that it's happening at. And then from there, it'll reduce the strain on both the wastewater treatment plant and the lagoon that we have.
Okay. Anything else on?
So if you wanted to move forward with this project, we could do this right away, because we have the funds, and this is, again, outside of the budget, so we don't have to include that in. He could put the RFP out tomorrow.
Assuming he had it written by tomorrow.
Yes.
It's close.
Does this require city council?
It would
Yes.
require city
Yeah.
So
council.
it would have
Yes.
to go still end of the month.
This body would need to make a recommendation to council.
Yeah, I say we recommend to do it.
Yeah, I make a motion, we recommend moving forward with this I&I elimination program, flow meter installation.
I'll second.
Does this require a name?
Lavallee,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Gorman,
Yes.
Schulz.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
So we just go down the list then, or what? Deb, or-
So the red are the items that are on the capital improvement plan. I guess we could probably go to Forest Downs next,
Okay.
since that's more significant.
So the next thing we're talking about is looping, similar to what we did on Howard Street, Marengo Road, Kennedy. This is adding into our system in areas where we're deficient. Right now, in between Autumn Glen and Oak Grove Crossing, we have no cross connection. So if we have a main break on Lonesome Road or anywhere on Autumn Glen, we will effectively be shutting down those entire subdivisions. What this proposes, or doing this project proposes, is looping the backside of Oak Grove Crossing to the backside of Autumn Glen, closing the loop, so that way we have another way to supply water to those areas should we have any issues with the infrastructure.
And this might have been brought up earlier, since I've been on city council, but I guess there was no plans with, when they had these developers come in to, like we're trying to do now, if they go bankrupt, but we have money that we could use, that they pay us to do all this stuff. 'Cause normally you have subdivision, developers doing all this infrastructure.
If it has an HOA, yes, we can still install the HOA fees.
Well, I mean, like we were doing with like Starbucks, they don't put in that sidewalk that we asked them, they gave that money.
In
For
that
like,
sense,
for
yes.
like any future subdivisions that end up coming to town. That's definitely one thing, if that hasn't been talked about, if they go bankrupt, at least give us the money up front if they're not gonna do it right away to do this stuff, so it's not coming out of the taxpayers.
That is correct. That is our goal with any future subdivisions. And that's why I mentioned the HOA, that as well. If it's designed to be an HOA, we now have that in our ordinances to be able to continue to collect that HOA as an SSA, if I remember right.
Yes.
So that all the infrastructure in that area is being taken care of just as if the HOA existed. Same with any other development, like the sidewalks at Starbucks. We're trying to make sure that each of these developers, that we have a tag in there to make sure that the city does not have to, or that, I say the city, I mean the taxpayers aren't having to pay that bill, should the developer skip town.
Yeah. And for this, correct me if I'm wrong if I'm understanding, because you said the HOA, this would be more of actually everyone, because it's infrastructure of the city. Correct? Because we're all paying property tax for infrastructure in the city.
Correct.
Because we don't pick and choose, hey, say my subdivision has an HOA, we're gonna do their streets because they're paying in their HOA.
So
The
this,
streets would be separate.
I think you're confusing an HOA versus city infrastructure, so.
I understand, but
Yeah.
this is city infrastructure, am I wrong?
It is, so.
So that's what, I'm just saying, clarifying for the people listening, that they
Right.
don't take it wrong, that HOA means, hey, I'm paying extra of that because of the infrastructure.
I understand, but an HOA does not have the responsibility to put in infrastructure. The HOA is to
That's why I
take,
mentioned the
maintain.
developer.
Yes. Now, that would be a developer's agreement, not
Lou
the HOA.
did affirm with me that we're going for, hopefully, as long as we're here, and hopefully the other people here after us, just like Starbucks, whoever, we have a contract agreement, hey, if you don't put this in at a certain amount of time, then that money that you gave to us, we'll put it in.
Right, so I expected, I didn't live here when this subdivision, when either of these
this
subdivisions
was-
were done, but this subdivision was supposed to, had another 400 homes platted
Correct.
to the north,
Yeah,
which I
it's
think
supposed
would
to go
have
up to
eventually
Oak Grove.
created that cross-connect that we were looking to put in, but that never transpired. I don't know if it was ever I don't believe it was ever part of the developer's agreement. It was just something that they were expecting to happen and never transpired. So in the end, the city is on the hook here to try and figure out a way to service these subdivisions, at least in the interim, until there's additional building that would add additional infrastructure.
And there's no, any grants out there that you could help fund this?
Typically not for this type of work, no.
Okay.
So, and I just want to correct myself, or correct the record, when I was referring to an HOA, typically HOA fees go towards maintenance of like any parks in the area, grass cutting in the common areas, mulch, tree replacement, that sort of thing. When an HOA doesn't exist anymore, in the past, what's happened is that responsibility has fallen onto all the taxpayers in the city, and what we've done about almost 2 years ago now, we re-implemented a rule, or we had the council, ask the council to approve an ordinance to allow us to be able to collect those HOA fees anyway. So then, again, that the funds collected, say, Snoopy subdivision, if that HOA were to go away, any of the HOA fees collected go only towards that Snoopy subdivision. They wouldn't go to Park Point or anything else. It's just for that area. And it's more for common areas.
Yes.
So when we're talking about projects like this, if you recall, we did one, well, okay, so remember Burger King, right? That was similar. We did one on Marengo Road, tie-in to over there by Randall under the creek.
That was all to the ARP funds.
That was with ARPA
Yep.
funds. We don't have any ARPA funds
Yep.
left. So this is kind of like continuing those looping projects that weren't necessarily, like Lou said, or like the mayor said, a developer responsibility, but just the way our system needs to be aligned to eliminate some of the stress on the system,
Safeties.
help with the
Oh,
flow.
I understand why we need a loop, but especially what I do for a living.
Right.
I was just seeing if there was any other grants or anything out there, because we were able to do a few of them with the ARPA
Right,
fund,
yeah.
see if we can try and at least cut the cost down.
That's why I say, not normally there are those type of grants, but the ARPA fund was
Yep.
definitely one of the funding that allow us to do some of this kind of work. Fortunately, we don't have enough of that fund to be able to do this work.
And then Deb, now, so where do the tap-on fees come from that are in this account?
They come, well, from the new building permits.
Okay,
And then we also, when I got the grant reimbursement from the wastewater treatment plant,
Yeah.
the 2 million, 1.999,
Yeah.
I put it into here
okay,
so that, it was separate from the cash account, so we
Okay.
could do something with it.
okay. So
remembering
this
that-
isn't so much, it's not property tax.
No,
money
so
that's in
anything
here.
we do out of Fund 70, the sewer water fund, cash account, or this account, this is also in Fund 70, is proprietary funds, right? So they're
Okay.
strictly funded by the water bills, the people, when people pay their water bill. Or when they build a new home or a new business
Connect to.
and they connect, we
Okay.
take some fees out of that permit and put them in here as well. So this isn't
Do you
this isn't
remember- I
levied.
understand, now when you said that, I do remember reading that.
Yeah,
But I guess my other thing is, with this, I know we have funds for this, but my concern is next year, in a couple months, we're gonna be talking about raising the water rates again to do all these other projects.
so residents do pay for this. This is not
Yeah.
outside of residents' pocket, it's just not tax dollars. But that is why we're trying to spend down some of this money right now, so that we can get some of these maintenance and infrastructure projects done and not have to raise the rates of water bills as much as we would have to. We can't just sit on this money, we need to be using it.
No, I understand that part.
So, and I just want to add while we're on the topic, there's two more tie-ins in here, Dewey Kennedy and East Brink and Jefferson. Those are not included in that bottom line. I did not subtract those out. We would be over if I did. I just threw them on there because they're also on the capital improvement plan. And when you go back and look at that plan, these projects down here were prioritized by previous staff, and then with some evaluations and some different things, as Mark Haig and Rob went around and looked at things, they kind of reallocated that priority a little bit, and they felt that if we were to proceed with these funds on one of these projects, that the Forest Downs is the highest priority right now. So it doesn't have to be done, but it is number one on
Yeah, that's a change.
their list.
That's a change, isn't it?
It is.
Because the the Dewey Kennedy and East Brink Kennedy were there in 2019, I know that.
Yeah, on the east
Well,
side
I
is
think all
city.
three were, but
Yeah.
the priority was higher on the other two.
Yeah,
I think right now that my major worry is, East Brink Kennedy to Jefferson Water Main, that's to address a flow issue, with some pressure here and there. Same with the Dewey and Kennedy Sanitary, that's to eliminate an additional lift station that's kind of in a goofy spot. That's the one that's right in the middle of the road. Those things are functioning okay now, and there's less of an urgency factor if something happens, because, those could be addressed somewhat easily, or, we can get by. If something happens to the infrastructure out in Oak Grove Crossing or Autumn Glen, that's concerning, especially because we've had more building going on in both of those areas. So we've had more building going on in Autumn Glen, we've had more interest in Oak Grove Crossing. So as these get more and more developed, we're gonna be affecting more and more people.
And Autumn Glen, since it was never fully developed, we are doing what we did like with my subdivision. It's only gonna be small developers here and there. It's not a big developer that comes in, says, hey, I wanna finish this thing. You guys aren't looking for that at all, and so they could actually fit in this, excuse me, infrastructure and put it in there and finish it for us.
So the answer to that is, if a large developer wanted to come in, we would certainly work with them to do that, but we don't believe that one would
Okay.
for these particular projects.
One of the things we should point out on this is the land acquisition as well.
There are some variables in this, and there's land acquisition. In talking with some engineering friends of mine, he said, there's sometimes where you can say, say this was, Bob's field, you can say, Bob, we're gonna put this water main in here, it's gonna make it more developable for you in the future. He's like, a lot of times people will come to you and they'll basically say, like, oh, well, you're gonna improve the value of my land, like, don't pay me anything for it. His recommendation was, whatever the land is valued at, you give them that, because otherwise that sets precedent in the future and favors and all that stuff like that. So that's why in here there's appraisals and surveys. We have to do this the right way, give proper values, so that way there's never, well, you gave him a free water main, just because he gave you the land. Like, no, we paid him for it. But those costs are unknown until we get the surveys done, until we figure out how much easement, how much temporary easement do we need, how much permanent easement do we need? Because ultimately, in these locations, this wasn't platted out. If you look at Athena, you can see from the sky, over by Huntington Ridge, there's a whole other subdivision that's already platted. So a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff's probably done, or the paperwork was done. But for these areas, we kind of have to break ground on that. We have to set up those conversations. We have to pay for that value. So in here is that, the assumption, Deb and I were kind of talking about it. It's like, it's kind of a guess at 50K, but we don't know what it might be until we get into it. And also, we technically, we don't know. This is very high level estimate of probable cost.
What is the total length of that line that has to go in?
I think on that one, it's about 1,674 feet.
And that's what's being shown to us, or is it going further?
There's a little bit that goes further. Basically, this is going to connect to the end of Forest, or it's the end of Autumn Glen, this is Forest Downs.
Yeah, Gary has it at 1,674 linear feet.
Thanks, Mike. I was going to ask you to do that to give us a better idea of what we're looking at.
So you're
Yeah,
looking
okay,
at
I
going
see.
around here and connecting.
And there was a few ways we could do it. This was, some of the best path. There's coming off the end of Magnolia Street and going to Cedar, but then you're crossing 4 parcels. Do we go off the end of, Wildflower there and, cut across at the end of that and come up and over and get easement there? Trying to follow, the original Forest Downs follows that pond, curves up, and then I forget what the name of the proposed street's gonna be, but that actually curves over to meet Forest Downs at a T. There's unknowns, but this is why we're here, is that this is a deficiency we've noticed in the structure, in the infrastructure, and this would close up a loop that could help protect quite a few homes.
How many homes are we building in Autumn Glen right now? I know Habitat
This
for
is-
Humanity, what?
There's 2 under construction.
I think it's either 2 or 4. A lot of it's the habitat houses.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's currently, well, I don't know how many are actually under construction. They just completed a home here, over in here. So, and then I know that a bunch of these lots were just recently purchased by Platt, so.
to be developed.
They're expecting to start building over there as
Oh,
well.
awesome. That's good. No, I mean,
So
I,
you're adding more, more housing here. The only way that water comes into this huge subdivision is this way.
Yeah.
So if you had a break right here, this entire subdivision has no water till it's fixed.
I make a motion that we recommend Forest Downs to Wildflower and Water Main Extension.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'm making my notes.
No problem.
Guys started on me.
Did you guys want some kind of provision, like a cap on the cost for now, in the event that the land acquisition goes higher than expected?
Well, I mean, I would think we would need to give you a little room on that. I mean, if it's another 50 grand, I'm good with that, I would think.
So capped at 300?
What is it right now?
Well,
250, yeah, 300.
Yeah,
Are
'cause
you okay with
Gary's
that?
is at 260 on his,
250.
Oh, wait a minute.
I had 260, it actually calculates out to 260
Yeah.
on the memo, or the
Oh,
email.
the 300 then, that's fine.
Well, if we cap it at 300, add another 50,000, is that going to zero out
Yeah, you,
all the
No.
funds? Because you only have 44,797 listed.
That's, yeah, it will, but we still have the reserve up top.
Okay.
I mean, it's not going to zero out the account, it's just going to zero out what I held aside.
You still have some,
We would still have,
close to 1.5 million in reserve.
yes,
so you're just kidding about the 250?
yeah, it was just a joke.
You don't want to deplete the account completely.
Just to be clear, though, for the record, you're.
Wiggle
amending your
room,
motion
wiggle
to the
room.
Yeah,
cap.
right, pending my motion to max that at $300,000. That gives you 98,000 for land acquisition.
As we move
And
And
Wait,
this
closer,
wait,
just gives us right away, right? It
Before you
doesn't,
start
know.
up, Charlie, you seconded, he amended. Can you amend your second?
Oh, I amend my second
Thank
you.
to 300,000 from 250.
Now.
no, I don't, I forgot we had to vote, sorry.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Is there any more discussion? No? Okay.
All right. Matt?
yes.
John?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes?
Jay?
Yes.
All right. Passes 4-0.
So this is a recommendation that's going to go to the city council. So basically, we're going to recommend that the 145 be spent and the 300 be spent. And then, and we still have a reserve of almost 500,000.
Actually, yeah, a million, actually.
Yeah.
We have the reserve of unforeseen of 500, and then
Yes.
we have the 960 for all of the bonds and loans, which one will be paid in full next year. I actually looked into paying that off early, but this bond is not, we can't pay it off early. It's some type of bond, it's not allowed. And then once we get a year or so under our belt with the EPA loan, I'll have a better idea of our funds coming in the cash account and what we can cover, so.
We also have on here the digester tuck pointing. I think, Mike, is that you then?
That's
Please.
Mike, yep.
Go ahead and talk about that. if we get- Sorry, Charlie.
Basically, we just need masonry work done on the side of the digester. It's got several cracks, leaks pretty good on the sides, so. Nothing too sexy on that one.
No, tuck pointing is not very, okay. I make a motion to approve the 50K for the digester tuck pointing.
Oh,
It's right above the Forest Downs.
yeah.
So, here's
Well,
me
that,
again.
okay, but that's included in the number,
Yeah.
okay. So, yeah,
So
I got you.
you need a second before you can start discussion.
Right.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Did anybody want a second?
I-
Did you? You made the motion.
I made the motion.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Charlie. All right, now we can discuss. Go ahead, Micah.
So, my only thing, and I guess going off of Gary's thing, and I know we got a lot of lead lines out there, and that's one thing we're also looking for, but can't we use some of this money to start replacing some of the water mains that are old, that aren't lead? And, because this is part of the whole thing, and, that's the other thing people probably gonna be looking at. That's one thing, once you get one break, we always get a few more because of pressure and everything, but there's probably a lot of areas that can start having new water main, put in. I know we're not the only municipality with this issue.
Yeah,
Everyone
I-
around
I-
the country has this issue.
I don't mean to correct you, but we don't have lead water mains.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
have lead service lines.
Service
I
lines.
just don't need
Yeah,
you two blowing up.
We may or may not have lead service lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's that?
So
We may or may not have lead service
Well,
lines. Please fill
unfortunately,
out your surveys.
you've reported them as lead.
I was
Okay.
saying, probably
So,
Okay.
have some
lead.
old ones in the old part of town.
Yeah.
Service lines.
So, basically, part of what we paid Seabell to do, or the proposal, and this was discussed earlier in the meeting, was that they're seeking grant funding for that, but we can't do anything until we know where they're at. And right now, we've got about 260, 270 reported. We need to finish that out. Mike and I have been working together. I got some paperwork so we can start going door to door. Because until we can kick in doors and start looking at service lines, we have to sort of.
This
will
was
the
more, sorry,
compliance.
Rob, not the service lines, and thanks for correcting me, Mike. I'm just talking about the main water mains, that, they're all getting old. We eventually, instead of always, which Public Works does a fantastic job fixing them and everything, but actually replacing bigger sections to actually, and you probably will still have some breaks even when you fix bigger, because this is how it is, but, so you not keep chasing the whole thing down the road.
Right now, it's tough to identify a single location other than maybe, the northern section of Garfield Road, where we've
Okay.
had quite a few. Other than that, they've been pretty sporadic. We've only really ran into other clamps, very rarely. Not to say that doesn't happen, but, there's records being kept now. We're gonna be putting stuff into GIS. But, for the immediate need, like Deb said, we kind of need to spend some of this money and spend it down and do it in a fashion that makes sense. So like the water main extension, tying that up, we can get by with the water mains in the existing condition by, digging down, clamping, for now. We don't have an immediate need to replace a section of water main, but if something were to happen out there, that's why we've suggested these.
As discussed before, doing the looping will extend the life by reducing the pressure, or reducing the strain on the existing system.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we also do the water and sewer lining. That also extends the life of the mains.
So like what we did over in Burger King and underneath the railroad tracks
Yeah,
was,
we had
it
issues
was
for a
lined
while.
instead.
Yeah,
So
I remember
that's-
that being done.
That's an option in the future, so if we do have, because,
Wasn't
pure-
Air Street, that, you talking about
Yep,
Air Street?
underneath
Yeah.
underneath the railroad.
Yeah.
Those situations, rather than doing a bunch of excavation and road work and this and that, if we have a location in the future where that's something that we can certainly take care of, that'll be something we evaluate before, replacing a whole section of main. If the main's generally, it's not have a bunch of deviations in it and it's in generally okay shape to line, we can get away with that here and there.
All right, thank you.
So just so I'm clear, we've got a approval on I&I, we've got a approval on Forest Downs, and we have approval on tuck pointing to go to council.
not approval.
Vote on that
I was just going to ask, Chairman, is it okay to call for a vote?
Gotcha, okay.
Is there any more discussion? Yeah.
Okay. Matt?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
That recommendation passes 4-0.
That's it.
Rest are yours.
Okay.
Yeah, the rest
Everything in the
so
blue.
on your list here, the ones that were kind of in bold, I guess, are the ones that they're seeking to do. So above those ones in red are the next group that I think the utility department is looking to do.
Yeah, ours are, some of these Jim had put in previously, before I got here. We did make a couple of changes. The wastewater truck was in this year's plan. We delayed that due to, we ran into some problems when we were working in the clarifier right about the time I got here. What the initial thought was on that turned into a problem because there was apparently an upgrade after the drawings that we had. So we had drawings from the 60s, and apparently there was an upgrade at some time in the 70s that we have no record of. So we had to go back to the drawing board. That ended up hitting us on that project. So we decided to delay that. We would still like to revisit that. Looks like we're going to come in under budget, under what our budget for this year was for the clarifier total, but we'd like to, go ahead.
I was just gonna, for clarity, it's all under the new equipment line item in the cash account, the clarifier as well as the truck, so we're kind of waiting to see where that clarifier comes in and holding off on getting the truck, but we're running out of time now, so.
Right.
Just on his list.
Yeah. Eventually, we would like to be able to get a truck that's big enough that we can put a hoist on the back of it so that our staff can actually do some pulling of pumps out at the lift stations. We're going through right now and evaluating lift stations. We're doing flow testing at this point. We're going to also be doing some electrical training and testing sometime probably in the March, April timeframe. We're bringing in an electrician to do some training with the guys so they can learn how to meg pumps and learn how to do the amp draws, so that we can actually do some predictive maintenance on these, so that we can actually get a better idea of what's the actual condition of the station. But in order to do that, it's about $1,500 every time we call somebody in to pull a pump. So we can do some of the work from up top, but we can't do it all. And we have Mississippi Valley come in once a year. You know, they're pretty reasonable. They charge us $2,000, $3,000 to come in and inspect everything one time a year. But with a lift station, you know, you can inspect it today and tomorrow morning can have a problem in a different direction. So that's $25,000 that we were asking for there. You want me to just keep going through these?
Yeah.
Okay. Our backhoe, we looked at possibly trying to buy a used backhoe, but the prices are just through the moon. We use this backhoe mainly to move sludge around in the sludge barn and to do some minor digging on the plant site and at a couple of our, at the well sites. We just want to take this in and have it given a thorough repair job. It leaks more hydraulic fluid than... Yeah, I think we usually take a barrel of hydraulic fluid out with it, and when we take it to work, it's probably not that far off. We're estimating about $20,000. I know Rob said his guys can take a look at it, and they'll take it as far as they can, but we're thinking that it's probably going to need to have Case take a look at some of the other pieces on it. Chlorination systems, we have 2 more chlorination systems that are probably 20 years old. We can't get parts for them anymore. So we would like to and just essentially finish replacing the chlorination systems we have at well 6 and well 10. So that those systems, we can actually be able to get parts again. Right now, we scavenge to find parts for these. The first change, we had cleaning of the digester noted. We've decided to change that to replacing the filter media at well 6. That media was installed in 2000. They recommend replacing it every 10 years or so. So we missed it, just a little bit.
Right on time then.
And since we're going to be taking that tower down in the fall, it seems to make sense at this point in time to go ahead pull the media out while the tower's down so that we can get as much work done during that period of time that that system is offline. So we'll be doing that this fall. The media itself's about $20,000, and then there's contracting cost. We would probably look at somebody like a Manuso's, who I had do the softener over in Woodstock. They're pretty good at handling vessels and getting inside of them. They're good at crawling into the vessels. I'm not good at crawling into the vessels anymore. I'm too old and fat. And then the last thing, this kind of goes back to the lift station. We have several lift stations that need some pretty significant panel work. The electrical has been in place in a lot of these places for many, many years. Conduits falling apart, and the electrical panels themselves, need to be replaced. The electronics inside of them. I did 2 of these over in Woodstock, larger stations, but roughly in the $80,000 to $100,000 range is what we were looking at to replace the panel, get the electrical up to code, and make it to where it's not such a death trap when the guys have to go out there and work on them at night, which is generally when they're going to have to go work on them. So
So you note on here that this is for one.
yes.
What about the other one that you needed repair? Are we going to put it in this year's other budget?
Well, we're not going to put it in this year's. I'm going to see what kind of costs we can get out of the first one, see how much I can pull out of it. And then I think when we get done with the evaluation of the lift stations, I'd like to come back next year and sit down and just discuss kind of a long-term plan for how we're going to deal with these stations. Lift station pumps used to go 20, 30 years. You're lucky if you can get 10 out of them anymore. And some of these pumps have been in these stations for quite a long time. So really kind of need to get an idea of where we're at with these. As Rob will tell you, a lift station going down will cause more problems than, I can lose the plant for probably 24 hours with the oxidation ditch, turn it back on the next day, and we're back in business. The lift station goes down for 24 hours, and we're going to have some angry customers. Or we're going to be discharging stuff onto the ground, which means we're going to be having some hefty fines coming from IEPA. So really, that's my goal for this year, is to get a good evaluation done of the stations, and then come back next year and sit down with a 5 or 10 year plan to kind of focus on those stations and get them up to where they need to be.
So, Deb, the truck, it says pushed off, but that means was pushed off? But you want, it's back on? Is that what that means?
It was pushed off of the cash account budget it's in this year's budget for sewer water cash account. And that's what we're holding off on doing because the digester came in higher than we expected. Right?
So what's in this?
Clarifier, sorry.
It's in your math here, though, right?
It's in our math, yes.
Okay.
On this spreadsheet, it's in the math, yes. Yep.
All right. Now, I motion to approve the $240,000 be allocated for these requested projects.
Even with the truck right now?
Yep.
That's also a clarifier that we don't know the price yet.
No, the clarifier is in our current operating budget.
This is a was. It was pushed off.
Yeah.
Now it's not.
So, yeah, I guess
In
that's
other
what's
words,
confusing me.
the
I guess.
clarifier
I'm looking at
is-
next year.
Yeah,
The clarifier is under the current budget. This is not budgeted money.
I know, this is
So
for next year's
they're
budget.
asking to do the truck under capital
I guess
improvements.
when it says pushed off here, it makes me seem like we're pushing it off, like she made a comment, like when she made this is, and then she
Right.
realized pushed off type thing.
That's confusing, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
we-
pushed it off for now in the current budget outside of this account.
Yeah, we were supposed to get this year, but we made the decision to delay.
So we have
It's
So
a
we have
time-
enough to do.
Yeah, at the time we put this together,
We're fine.
We
So-
immediately started realizing that this was gonna cost a lot more.
So we have a motion.
Do we have a second?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for clarifying that. I was hoping you were getting interrupted with that, but thank you for clarifying that.
Is that a second?
I second it.
Is there any more discussion? Lou?
All right.
Call the roll.
Schulz?
Yes.
Lavallee?
Yes.
What was the second?
You seconded
I
it.
said I did not second it.
Oh. Oh, okay. Someone
I'll
second.
second it.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Do it again.
Perkins?
Yes.
Gorman?
Yes.
Lavallee?
Yes.
Schulz?
Yep.
Recommendation moves to council 4-0.
Affirmative.
Thank you.
Charlie, you only got 3 months left of this.
Is it that long?
Yep.
End of April, Charlie.
Yeah, I know. All right, where are we?
Number 6, which, Chairman, that needs to be pushed off because McDOT was unable to submit a draft of the IGA for tonight's discussion.
Oh, so there's no IJ to discuss.
To discuss. No draft for anybody to see.
Remove from the agenda.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Recommend you put it on next month's agenda.
Okay. Next month's agenda. Okay, bond update, discussion on bond update.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions, or there's been a few questions, I should say, regarding our conversations about paying for road work. Keep in mind, I know there's some questions as to wanting to wait until we get a master plan for road work, but in talking with Gary, it's hard for him to create a master plan if we don't know how we're going to fund everything. So I'm wanting to continue this conversation so we can be able to give Gary some direction on how to move forward. So I know it's a lot right in front of you. I put this together earlier today. I'm going to try to answer some questions, and I'm hoping to take some more questions to be able to answer them either now or in subsequent meetings. In the first large spreadsheet, or you see here marked timeline, one of the questions that was brought up was if we don't do a bond, how does this look? How does our payments look? If you look under bond 1, what I mean by front-loaded when I've talked about this is that we're paying a lot of the principal early on. So for the first 5 years, you're looking at a $710,000 to $715,000 payment. That's principal and interest. And then in year 6, which would be the start of the second bond, bond 1 drops all the way down to $124,000, or $123,250 for that first year, and stays right in that 120 to 127. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're actually paying a lot of interest up front, not
You're paying
principal.
principal up front.
I don't think that's, according to that chart you gave us, the principal comes at the end.
No, it's not a mortgage. Bonds, the way this is set up is that we're paying more principal up front. That's why in bond 1, you're paying,
Actually, a
Less than
mortgage is
interest.
the other way around.
you actually pay more interest early in a mortgage.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's right. And then this, you pay less interest early. You
Correct.
pay more,
You're paying
Wait a
more
minute.
principal early,
okay.
interest less.
Okay, I'm sorry, you're right.
And that's why,
It is
particularly with
correct.
bond 1, if you look overall, your interest that you're paying out of that bond 1 is a lot less. Again, because you're paying a lot more up front against principal.
So is that spelled out somewhere? How that breaks out?
I had
'Cause it
that
looks like
in,
it's all
the memo I submitted to admin. But I can send that around again.
Well, that is a big, piece of paper from, was that from admin? Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah.
Did you work out that problem with?
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
so if you were to do bond 2 in year 6, you'll notice your principal and interest would be about $590,500. But your bond payment, as I mentioned before, drops to $123,250. Combined, that would be a yearly payment of $713,750. The reason why that's important, and in your green column there, you'll see that you're in that 710 to 721,000, is because we're going on the baseline that for the 1% sales tax, we're getting a minimum of $900,000 a year. So if we keep our bond and interest payments, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, well, actually it'd be 1, 2, or 3, the payments never exceed that $720,000. That's why we have them front loaded when the first bond, or when that bond hits, so that when we get to the next bond, the payments on the first one are lower. So combined, they're still in that $720,000 range. And the reason why that's important is if you look in the second to last column, remainder, that's $186,000, roughly $180,000 every year, assuming just the $900,000 in 1% sales tax, and then minus your bond payment. And if you notice, even as you go all the way down to, was it in bond 3, just before that fourth bond would hit, you're still in that $700,000 range. So you're able to take care of at least 3.9, 3.8, and 3.8 million dollars as a spike during that bond 1, bond 2, and bond 3 drop. That still leaves you $180,000 in that year's sales tax dollars, that 1%, to apply towards roads. Now, that last column.
That's assuming 900,000.
That's assuming
We had
900,000.
960 this year.
Yeah,
So it was more.
but it's safer to say 900,000.
Yeah, no, I
If
get
there's
it.
more, we
Yeah.
can add more into roads. And then the last column you see in this one, it's, I have it listed as REM plus MFT. That's the remainder, that 180,000, plus the MFT funds for that year. So if the question was, how much money in those off years could we put towards roads? Well, this is how much you could put. And it ranges from $638,000 in year 2 to a baseline of about $400,000 in those off years.
You got one that's 178, another one that's 182.
Right, that's still that remainder
Yeah.
without you applying the MFT. So if you've got, in theory, the way this works is if you do $3.9 million in year 1, you don't need to add the MFT funds. You can bump that over to the next year so you have a bigger lift or more
Yeah,
money
right.
in year 2. Plus that 186,000, you've got, in that case, 638,000, which is 3 times more than what we've done in a typical year.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get the most bang for the buck throughout. Now, so I try to do this as a timeline chart for 30 years at the bottom where you can see where we get that big drop, but then you get those off years, which if you notice, we don't drop to 0. We're still doing road projects in those off years. Now, in the far right, you see it says bond 1, 2, 3, and 4. The amount of the bonds are $4 million. The interest on that, so $16 million in bonds, it's $5.5 million in interest for a grand total of $21,506,792, assuming all these numbers are correct as of today. The interest rates could change. That all is a later decision. But the reason why this is important is the next little cutout after that shows the excess 1% over this entire 30 years amounts to $5,493 and $5.5 million. Let's just, okay. And then you still have that original retention of $900,000 for a grand total of $6.4 million. So you would spend $22.4 million over this 30 years on $5.5 million in interest for a grand total of $27,900,000. Now, why that's important is under the column that says process. This is the actual money being applied for projects. Okay? That grand total is $26,950,500. So
Wait a minute, does that include MFT?
that includes MFT.
Yeah, I don't know why you keep doing that when we're trying to talk about
You
whether
asked
we
me
do
for
a
the
bond or not.
maximum amount of money to be applied to roads.
But MFT is MFT and it can be applied anytime.
Right, but you asked me for the maximum amount to be applied to roads. So I took
Well,
the loan money or the bond money.
Then you could also take a straight line 900,000 and add MFT to it every year.
You could,
Yeah.
but you asked me to do this, and I did this. So if you do this, you would have $26.95 million applied throughout this entire 30 years against $27.9 that you've spent, including interest. That's a difference of $949,000, or roughly $31,000 a year lost in interest. You're getting a lot more bang for the buck if you go this route. So that's just this first chart. So the next one is a
Can I ask
snapshot.
a question, Lou?
Sure.
About that, about getting more bang for the buck? Because the numbers on the next page, it's not clear to me that we're getting more done, because the quantities are just straight 3 times.
And so if you allow me a
So that
second to
doesn't
explain that.
understand how,
So
that's
on the snapshot
more.
chart, if we applied $1 million a year, and these are numbers that came from Gary based on, the very bottom is numbers we've actually had. These are Harvard numbers, okay? So you go to the very top here, if you assume $1 million, the average unit cost drops just a little bit because you're getting more. You're trying to bulk out this project. The quantity is 36,000. I mean, I can go through all that part, but the point is that this is over a 3-year time span, and if you include inflation, you'll end up spending over over this average quantity number, $3.1 million. Now, this is where hopefully this helps out, Lisa. If you do $3 million up front, and we use Rolling Meadows numbers because we've never done anything more than $300,000. We have nothing to go by, but Rolling Meadows is somewhat comparable. The average unit cost drops dramatically. And for the same amount of work, just assume the same amount times 3, we would actually spend $2.5 million to get that same amount of work done. So that's a savings of $660,000 right there. And I could go on, if you're going year 4, year 5, year 6, you're still adding 3%. And that's because that's the industry average for construction costs year over year. Now, it could go as high as 5. Yes, it could drop down to 2, but the average is 3%. And so if we're going to project that far out, let's go by the industry average. So now I'm going to go back to the very first page, which says at the top, every year. If we use $900,000 and we go the approach we have been in the past, which is going every year. Oh, sorry, yeah, I apologize. I was trying to staple in a fury. So yeah, at the very top, it should say EJ or EY or every year.
Yep.
Okay.
Where are we?
The first
First page, Charlie, EY on the
Yeah.
top.
And I know I'm throwing a lot at you. I want you to see this, digest it, come back with questions.
Yep.
This is a long process. We got still another 11 months before we have to make a serious decision.
You get to explain it to a brand new group.
So, assuming the same 30 years, at $900,000 a year being the base that we're going to spend. And then when you factor in the 3% in inflation, in year 2, that same $900,000 is only getting you $873,000 worth of value. And every year after that, it drops. So by the time you're done at the 30th year, or 2055, that same $900,000 that you're spending is getting you a $360,000 value. You're losing money by going year by year.
You also have the same inflation every 5th year in your plan.
Wouldn't the base go
Every-
up every year with inflation, though?
Potentially.
Well,
Depends on-
potentially, if it's gonna go down, it's gonna potentially go up, though. If you're gonna count it going down for sure, but you're gonna say potentially going up, I don't think that's right.
Well, even
I
if
think
you
it needs
just
to be
cut it,
apples and apples.
even if you were to just cut it off at year 5, you're still losing money going year to year. You're not getting as much bang for the buck. And we've already done this. We've had $225,000 in MFT funds that we've applied year to year, and every year we do less. Adding another $900,000 is not going to change that formula. You're still going to end up spending less. You just get a little more initially, but you're still spending less money by the time you get to year 4, year 5.
But then you also have to add the 3.9 to 5.4 or whatever it is, interest every year, and, you know, on your plan. And that goes for all the years, all the way up to 2055.
No, in this chart, this last one that we're talking about, is if you go year to year, don't do a bond, anything. You're just going year to year like we have been.
No, I know, but I'm
So
saying.
there wouldn't be any interest included in this. You're not paying a bond on this.
Exactly. But in your plan, you are paying interest.
Right, and as I already showed,
And you were doing that every year at the tune of 3.9%, 4 point something percent, 4.5%.
which is included in the P&I.
Yes, but
Right.
that's money you're spending.
Right.
The value of that money's going down because of the interest you're
Which,
you're
going back to
spending.
that chart, you'll see, I've already included that all in as 5.5 million over the course of all 4 bonds. It's already been factored in, and we still come out ahead.
I put together a chart as well, and my chart shows an accumulation of money that we have towards roads. Based on the line, which is $900,000 a year, which if you just multiply it out, that's the simplest math project in the world. You get about, $27 million in 30 years at $900,000 a year. That's this line. These other lines are how much we get each 5 years. So the accumulation, we get $4 million the first year, which has to last us the second year, the third year, and the fourth year. The 5th year, we get another $4 million, so that's where it raises up. You can see that there are we do get to do a little bit more each 4 years. Once you hit the 15th year, all your money is used. You have the last of the 16 million is there, the bond money. Now, you still have reserve money because this kind of a bond requires a reserve. So there's reserve money that he added in, but then he also threw an MFT, which has absolutely nothing to do with the bond.
So if you let me finish on my charts. You also have a chart that says no MFT.
Zero MFT, yeah, zero.
Yeah. So no MFT. If you still go with the bond process, you still have 186,000 on average, or 180,000 plus every year to go towards roads.
Right.
Your bond payment is still 700,000 plus, ranges, like I said, between 710, 711 to as much as 722 over that course of 30 years.
Right.
Okay. So this is no MFT funds. You'd still have $186,000 a year, in addition to the 3.9 million that you dropped that first year.
That difference is between 900,000 and what you're paying.
Right.
So in other words, you're paying 713, but you're getting 900,000 in, as as part of the tax. So that's where that's coming from. That number that that you just quoted is a subtraction of the payment,
Correct.
the debt service from the 900,000.
And so you'd have that 3.9 million.
If you
In
had
year one.
900,000, you don't have to get rid of the other part. You still have it every year.
Every year. But you'd be getting less and less work done every year.
I'm going to admit something. You're absolutely right. But the only thing that really makes this might work is if not the economy of scale thing, not the interest rate versus the inflation thing. That doesn't work. There's no savings there. But there is savings if somebody can prove to me that we actually get huge savings by doing 4 million for the first 15 years, every 5 years. And it's that much that it overcomes that, then it would come out.
Which we did. We've talked about this.
I
And
have-
even here,
I'm not
using a
gonna-
comparable city that did a large project, this was the savings they got overall. So we would actually get, and
In my
the other thing
opinion,
is-
okay, that's what everybody has to make their mind up on,
Right.
is that factor.
Can I interject?
Yep.
I think, to your point, you're going to pay interest if you bond it out. This was my initial concern. Where's the tipping point, right? Because there is an economy of scale of doing more at once. We know that. We just don't know exactly what that economy of scale is. And I asked our engineer, where's the tipping point? Is it 2 years, 5 years, 4 years? What is it? He isn't exactly sure, but he thinks 5 years is a good number because, one, it's affordable for us because we could afford the payment based on the amount of reserve that we have to maintain. And then, secondly, it is going to give us some economy of scale versus doing year on year on year. To your point about the interest versus the inflation rate, let's assume the inflation rate is 3%. Let's assume that the interest is 3% I mean, that's a wash, right? At the end of the day. So you're right. The real savings here is economy of scale. Can we get more done because the quantities will be less because we're buying it in bulk? My recommendation to the committee and full council is let's try one bond. Let's see and put that to work and see how that plays out. The big piece that's not been discussed here is the community wants the roads fixed. You're going to fix a whole lot more roads faster if you bond out because you're going to be able to do a lot more of that first year and still be able to do construction the following 4 years based on MFT availability and whatever excess sales tax that you're going to generate. But you're going to give a lot of work done right away, which I think our residents want. They want as much done as quickly as possible. And there is no real dollar amount that you can put on that because at the end of the day, a resident doesn't care how much you're spending as long as you fix their road. And so you're going to be able to do more of their roads by doing this plan.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that might be something, because one of my biggest fears is that we're making a commitment here to 2055. Jesus, you know.
Well,
I
you
mean,
also mentioned a couple months ago.
wait a minute, you're not. That's the thing that I'm telling you what the plan would look like if you followed it 100%. If in year 5, year 6, when the next bond's coming up, and right now the projection that we use is 4.08% for the interest rate. If it doubles or whatever ends up happening, or the council doesn't feel comfortable at that time, don't do it.
Well,
You're not committed to bonds 2, 3, and 4 yet.
Which I was trying to explain to him. You mentioned this a couple meetings ago when we first brought this up, because I even asked that question about it. Yeah, so that was the thing. It was that. And of course, none of us might not be here in 5 years, because we each will be done in our terms, even the two that are leaving. But we will, but with that whole thing is saying, yes, try the one bond. And if it does, and if the economy goes to, crap, then hopefully the next council will realize that and just keep the 900,000.
So are you suggesting a 5-year bond instead of these bonds are longer than that?
Well, it would be a $4 million bond over 15 years.
Yes.
Yes, that's what my recommendation is.
Usually
Do
every
a single
5 years they
bond,
would do a new bond.
and then we'll see how that works because you're going to get a whole lot of work done done quickly, which the community is looking to get their roads fixed.
I'd personally really like to see a plan that indicates what are the roads that are going to get done.
And that
Because then nothing's going to happen for 5 years.
I concur, but you cannot. Our engineer says I need to know how you want to fund it. If you're going to fund it annually, as
Why
has
can't
been
he do
suggested,
both? Shows us both of it,
You're asking them to do twice as much work.
because we usually do
We
that with
have-
everything else, though. We ask these people.
This is a lot more intense, to actually get this, drawn out. You're gonna spend even more money on engineering, and then you're still gonna have a decision either every year or 5 years. And
We
even
don't
our
even know
engineer-
what the priorities are.
Well-
You know, we don't even know what the condition of the roads are and where we're going to have the most work required and
we
the
do-
most expense. I mean, we
Papers.
don't know that because that's what his study's gonna be, right?
Yeah, but
Right,
we,
so-
It's the core samples.
If I can answer that. So you're right, he's taking the core samples, he's taking the pavers data, he's crunching those numbers to come up with a list. Now, one of the questions that came up is, will this committee and eventually recommend to the council roads? Yes. The template that he's using is he's dividing the city into 4 quadrants. And in those quadrants, this committee and eventually the council will be able to decide the 2 roads, north and south, and the 2 roads, east-west, in each quadrant. That should alleviate, and I was going over this scenario before, or earlier today. If we get 4 good roads, 2 north-south, 2 east-west, the theory is that people are going to want to travel on those roads before they travel on their own, if anything, which is going to alleviate the pressure on the other roads until the next road constructions. And then at that point, you add another 2 north-south, 2 east-west. Now, the suggestions are going to be listed out like any other project that we've done, where he's going to take those data and say, all right, here's your critical roads, here's your major, here's your minor. What do you want to do? But to get to that point, he needs to know, are we going to go 5-year with a bond? Or are we going to go every year? Does that help answer?
Well, it does, except I think it would help to see what those roads are. I mean, what are the priority roads?
The,
Yeah, but
the
that's a
difficulty,
separate issue,
the
isn't it?
difficulty with that is, and if I'll jump in on this one, is at $900,000, the priorities of the roads change because you can only get so much done with that 900,000. But if we're talking about, a street like McKinley, if we can hit it, and I'm not saying McKinley's going to take all $3.8 million, but if we have areas like main thoroughfares where we can say, to bounce off what Lou said, is we have this influx of money in year one. We can really hit some of the bigger areas, the stuff that is more important, rather than 900, which sort of just, it moves the ball a little bit each year. But in that first year, we work off the economy of scale. We can hit larger main thoroughfares. We can do more complete roads. So that way, in year 2, where we're doubling up on the MFT money, we can do resurfacing. And really, what this does is, if we tell Gary we want one for 9,000 or 900,000, we want one for the 4-year or the 5-year plan. It's complicated to figure out both of those. Where if he has a direction, he can just go, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and here's my suggestions in order to make this work, with the data that they've collected, with the data that they've gotten from Paver. So that way, the work only has to be done once to figure out what direction we're going.
So, a quick question on this. John, as an engineer, there's no software you can't put in 2 different ways to spit this stuff out. Okay.
So,
No, there's a lot of non.
Okay. That's what I'm asking from. Thank you.
And so I can just spit this out because it's been gnawing at me a little bit. The other situation that you have is that, and this is the tough love part of it all, is if we only had, say, 60% of our roads that were passable, that were good, then you have a lot more choice in that 40% what to do. But we've got the opposite situation. We have more failing roads than we have good roads. So at this point, it's like throwing a dart against the board and say, all right, that's the road. That's where we're trying to provide as much choices as possible. But before we can even get there, we got to know, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go at least design as if it's going to a bond? Or do you want to design as if we're doing it like we have year by year? It's a tough call. It's a chicken and egg thing. But once we've picked a lane, or once we've picked a direction, we can build the rest of it up.
Lou, so say if we hold off from recommending this going to council for this month, but we definitely make the decision next month and after March, and once Gary knows which direction we're going, how many more months do you think will be until that master plan? Because he said he was getting close, but I guess this is the biggest part.
His actual quote was he's hoping to get it done by December, but now, not knowing what direction we're going to go funding wise, he's had to stop in his work. So if we push it off a month, it's just going to be that much further down the road.
December? Because I was thinking it was like going to be the spring when you mentioned this.
I thought he was going to, and again, we can go to the tape tomorrow, but I believe he was going to try to get at least a rough draft in October. So I would bet the rough draft would be November or December at this point if we push the project back.
I know one of the things that Gary's definitely pushed, and he's mentioned it a couple times, is that delaying figuring out how we're going to do it just pushes the process further and further along. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Lou, but he was basically saying that, you're starting to get to kind of critical mass where we need to get ahead of this so we can get this out, so that way we can make the bids and get everything out before the construction season. And the further this goes, the more we run into possible issues because of that.
So has he done all the core
Yeah, the
samples?
core samples have been
They are,
collected.
because of the good weather,
Okay,
if you call it that, in December,
well, yeah,
they were able to get it done in
Yeah.
December.
Snow.
okay.
Oh, he's
So
good.
they've done those, they've got all the data
Yes,
for those.
they've got that in papers.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with the 15-year bond. I mean, we need to start referring to it as a 15-year bond because it's being paid over 15 years. It's not 5 years, it's going away. And I think there's nothing wrong with trying it and see what it does, because there will be a huge impact to begin with.
The one bond you're talking about, right?
Just one,
Yep.
just
I'll
one.
second that motion.
Well, and I mean, if that's our recommendation to city council, then I said I have no issue with it. I recommend that we recommend to city council, we do a 15-year bond and see how it goes.
So I have a question on that real quick. Would that change the interest rate if we change the structure that was?
No, you're still locking in the first bond at the 3.99%, I believe it was. You'd be locking it in. Now, bond two, that's just if we did, bond 1, 2, and we did them all right now. We don't know what the interest rate for sure will be in 5 years.
Right, but when do we have to, if we're going to move forward with the program, the bond program that Bob has quoted us or has shown us, when do we have to let him know
Well,
we're not proceeding?
Ideally, the
With the
sooner the
next.
better, so we can lock it in before interest rates change.
I like the bailout lane. If it's needed, if it's successful, we can keep going.
I make that motion, and we recommend that to city council.
Been a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Well, I just wanted to wrap up some last questions, and I hope I'm not screwing this up, but there was a question about why don't we go for either a 50-year bond? Based on the 1%, the maximum amount for a bond we could do is $20 million. And the annual payment, principal and interest, would be $1.25, which means we'd use up the entire $900,000, and out of the general fund would have to pull out another $350,000. And then we would be locked in for 30 years, which means no other projects, except for MFT. And
Lou, you won. Stop
Well,
selling.
no, I'm just trying. I'm just trying to clear the air on that.
I mean, it's a good question.
Because I know if it's not now down the road, or listeners, one's going to maybe ask, well, why don't we do a bigger bond? Just want to make sure I've done my checklist here. So anyway,
So just to clarify, with this one bond,
Mhm.
that's going to be paid off over 15 years, the spike in construction is going to be 2026.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
you're setting this up for 2026.
And then every year after that's going to be 400,000-ish.
Yes, yeah, 4 at bare minimum,
And that includes
600,000.
MFT?
That includes MFT.
Okay, so 400,000-ish. And if we do nothing else, that's the way it's going to be for the next 14 years after 2026.
Correct.
For clarification, and the reason that it's 450 in year 2 is because we didn't spend the 225 on MFT in year
Correct,
1.
thank you.
and then the subsequent years until it, if this plays out this way, year 3 and year 4 are just the 225 because we didn't save any money the previous year.
And there too, in year 6, remember, since you're doing it front-loaded, you end up going to make lower payments in the last 10 years of the bond. So that 900,000 bare minimum, you still have some 1% sales tax to go towards roads in addition to any other funds.
Well, that was what I was trying to clarify, that.
Okay.
No, well, so, no, year one is,
So 2031, if we didn't do another bond, the principal, the payment we're paying on this bond of 15 is 123,
250.
correct.
Then whatever,
Take that out.
So that would be,
So add 600. Add this,
yeah,
add
That's
this
6.
We get 700 then, to 7 something to play with.
yes.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, to
If
fi- I
you-
mean, to
if you
fix
then
this,
went-
fix the Harvard streets with it, I mean.
Yeah, $767,000.
If you then went to, each individual year, you would have about 700,000 based on what we currently expect.
Right. So, and it still would be more than what we spent before. And if it comes out, nobody has the taste to do any more bonds, you can go back to year. You still have a significant amount of money above and beyond the bond to go year to year.
All right, so,
I call the question. It's about,
yeah,
Okay.
Got some more questions?
No,
These were
you
answers.
can't now.
Jay's pulling the big
I didn't
thing.
want to finish out my thought.
I call the question. We're done.
Already's in there or no? She said.
So, you want to call it?
yeah, that's number one rule of a salesman,
Stop selling.
Yeah, once you've sold the
Very
guy,
true.
stop selling, because you're gonna spend the rest of your
Get
time
the
buying
PO,
it back.
stop selling.
All right,
All right. So,
Gorman.
go ahead.
Gorman,
Yeah,
Perkins,
Yes.
Lavallee,
Yes.
Schulz.
Yes. You ever seen the movie, why am I thinking of it? Glengarry Glen Ross. Get them to sign on the line. That, right, Alec Baldwin does like the 7-minute speech.
D.
It is always be closing, always be closing. Or if on Saturday Night, it was always be cobbling. He did that whole, he was like the head elf guy came, anyway.
So this is huge, and it's going to help us out in the,
Sure.
in the long run. If worst case scenario, at least for the next year, we get a ton done, which again complies with the 1%.
Well, it depends on what road we're working on. If the road's really bad, needs a base.
The committee still has those
Yeah, right.
decisions ahead. At least I
Right.
can tell Gary.
Someone else has
This
that
is what they're
decision.
looking at. Okay,
all right, what's next?
I'm done. Good night.
That'll be yours, John. All you.
Vision.
Strategic vision. Did we vote?
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we voted.
Jesus, it's been a long day.
all right,
Strategic
Charlie.
vision. I don't have anything new on this.
Which that we just did with the budget.
Yeah, I mean,
Essentially,
I
you
think
did
that-
just do some strategic
Right.
vision. so.
The thing with the last budget meeting, or the last meeting that we had, was talking about the road work. If you notice, it's already been in the paper. We've shared it on the Facebook pages. We're trying to get the information out there as much as possible. And we're inviting anybody to come in and talk about the road work, about this projected plan of getting the roads done, which is part of our communication, which goes back to the strategic vision.
When is air gonna be let? When is air gonna be let?
Gary's preparing everything now. I think it's going to be, March,
So, yeah, mid-March.
mid-March, so that way we can get ahead of it for the construction season, see if we can get anybody out there
For work or after milk days, I'm assuming.
in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's.
They're gonna charge you
That's
for it.
gonna be
Hopefully
that's
get it
gonna
done
be
before
that's gonna be the
vote.
parade. Is at the end of the parade, there's gonna be a grinder.
I like that idea.
I can ask Gary for confirmation, or at least a better estimate, and then share that with the committee.
Okay. Nothing new other than that, okay. New business. I think we have Surf here because you requested,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
So, Aaron, if you can say your name, address.
My name's Aaron Schoen. I'm from Rango. I'm the construction manager for this project here in Harvard.
So, of course, this is from people, I wasn't on any of the last two calls with the new company that you guys subcontracting, but what I've been on the fire department, because we have already met on a different one with the old one. Are you guys still using that same strategy that you and Lou, with one of you guys had to be on site with them as well?
Yes.
So what happened on Saturday? Because they supposedly fled with the backhoe and everything.
What do you mean they fled?
Like they took off after they hit that line off of 14, the service line.
On Division Street?
Yep. And they weren't there anymore. They just moved on to another thing. Then wasn't there when the fire department showed up or night corps.
I wasn't aware of that. I was told from their construction manager that he was on his way there.
So that's why I'm wondering. You were not there like you used to be with that old company. Someone always there.
Yeah, I was out of town this weekend.
Okay.
No.
So January 27th, and I didn't know that until yesterday when I talked to the crew that was actually there on the call for the fire department yesterday. That was kind of similar, but they were just a block down in a new hole. They had to find them. That was up by the library on McKinley.
Yes, I was there for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why is anyone kind of staying on site when it gets called out?
The one on McKinley, I was on site the whole time there. Yeah.
So you just didn't recommend, okay. So the other
Yeah, 'cause
one is,
I think I talked to you there that time.
not this one, I've not been on any of
No,
the
the
new
one
ones.
at McKinley.
Yeah, no, McKinley I've not, that was not. Since the new company, I've not been on any of their
Oh, okay.
meetings.
It was someone else. Then.
Yes. So my concern is also the one on 14 Division, since you weren't there.
Mhm.
They dug with the backhoe right on the lines. Not like right over it. You could see the whole, you have the yellow lines for the gas line, like, you
Yeah.
know, dug on top of that. Wasn't like next to it. Plus, and they didn't hand dig it, they backhoe digged it.
They're not going to be allowed to do that anymore. They were already told they need to order another vac truck, and that's how they're going to do all their digging anywhere around gas lines from now on.
Okay. So my other question is, why wasn't this new company told that since we already went through this with the last company?
They were told. They have one vac truck. I don't know if it was broke down, but they were told they need to have a second one.
Okay.
So.
My other concern is with this is, and I know Lou has helped, which thank you, when I've talked with the other ones. It's just like, say, luckily, I don't think Rob will ever happen, and Mike probably understands, just be like Public Works. If our guys just started digging and hitting gas lines, then, you know, my fines, that would cost the city. I mean, we're not paying for this part, but just as you guys as a company, most likely it's going to subcontractor, but they might start finding Nightcore. I don't know how Nightcore does it.
They can step in and start causing or giving fines.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, my biggest concern is I want more oversight on these things. Because any person I've talked to back in whenever November, December, whenever we first met on the site, is I've talked to many people in this industry that they don't see this much stuff happening all the time.
Yeah.
So I will, and I'm remiss for not mentioning this at the last meeting. Was it the last meeting, or I think it happened in between? RLM had struck one of our sewer lines. No?
So
Yeah, thank you.
I will say that Aaron and I have an open communication dialogue, so when I do have a resident issue, Aaron's very responsive on that. Had a couple small things, but nothing major. Previously, Nightcore came through and they were doing televising ahead of replacing a gas service, and they discovered that there was a fiber bore that went through one of the sanitary services on Hart Street. I reached out to Aaron. He was right on top of it right away. They looked at their maps, they compared them with what they had, and it ended up that this actually
AT&T?
happened from Everstream.
Oh.
So Everstream came out, we got a hold of them, they sent out the Puritano who actually did the boring for them, and they had it fixed really quickly and without much fuss. So, that cross bore happened in December from what we can tell, but I can say that, whenever we do have an issue, Aaron's right on top of it.
Can I have a question? how far along are you on, what I guess is phase one?
Phase one's complete. We just started the third phase.
Oh, right.
I believe I shared, I believe I shared their plans with everybody, but if not, I'll send that out again.
Lou, I checked my email because I think I forgot to ask you after I saw that. I think it was like only like a couple pages that got sent to us, not the whole big thing that Charlie had.
Yeah, Charlie got an actual printout.
But I mean, the whole
Okay.
PDF wasn't all those pages.
I will send that out again.
Has any of the fiber been lighted yet?
Yeah, in two of the phases.
In two phases,
Yeah.
so you have consumers
Yes.
currently.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how many, but there's
Sure.
a good handful.
We didn't do anything like Capron just did, where we did the first ever person with surf, because I saw Capron, that you guys did that with Capron.
Yeah, we usually do. That's the business development department. I don't know how they handle that.
Yeah. There you go, Mayor.
We had a ribbon cutting when they first started.
No, I mean the first ever customer, they did
Yeah,
that.
I
think we need that.
Yeah, I
mentioned
can get a hold of
business.
Jen and have her
Yep.
get a hold of you, yeah.
Sure.
So if that's the.
That's the only questions I have. I'll stay in touch with Lou with this. And Aaron, it's not against you. I know it's not you. It's the contractors.
I know there's been a lot of gas hits and
Okay, so let me back up then, since I'm underinformed. How much longer till you're complete then?
I think the early estimate was June.
yeah, mid to end of summer. It all depends.
Yeah.
I mean,
At least around June is when the city buildings were
Yeah.
going to be lit
Our
up.
neighborhood probably won't be till towards the end.
So that's my sorry, and I haven't looked at the map for like the newer subdivisions. Usually a lot of the utility stuff's in the back. Are you doing that? Or are you going up front by the streets with your?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about rear easement,
Okay.
so.
My expectation will be all front east.
Okay, because I just know when like subdivision, all that cable, internet cable, and everything else was running in the back.
Yeah, usually I would have heard something
Okay.
before
I
we
think
even start.
they're expecting to be in the city's easement.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of weird how the gas company runs their lines anyway. I know in my front yard, when they came out, with the yellow flags and so on, and the yellow can of paint, it actually looks like they must have had extra cable or something, and they just went all over the place with it.
Well, you're in an older part of town. That's probably why.
Charlie, if you don't know where it's at, if you mark the whole yard and you hit the yard, you're covered.
Yeah, it's funny.
And it's not the first time, because what was it, Everstream? They went through my front yard too, and same thing. And they came out. Literally, what is that? About 10, 12 feet between the sidewalk and there. There's at least 16 flags, and all over that place. Like,
All yellow ones?
yeah,
Pretty soon, if we do a main break, it's gonna look like one of those bungee mazes that you have to
Yeah.
go through down to get to the main.
Oh yeah, those always look nice when you see those.
I told my wife, I said, I don't see how they can stop, not hit one,
So Aaron, thanks again for taking the time to come
you.
out, especially with the weather conditions.
Thank you again.
Sorry you had to go through our whole meeting.
Yeah, we should put him at the beginning, I guess.
Well, the agenda was already done, and
Yeah.
I didn't get confirmation.
I did have something else I wanted to talk about real quick, and that's the Air Street. Do we have the map that Gary provided of what he was gonna do? Can we show that on line somewhere? Map I'm talking about?
Shows the sides.
Yeah, the side streets they're doing.
Side streets.
Because my question is, because I've been down there and I'm pretty sure that I'm like, why did we stop here? We're only spending $600,000. I know we need $200,000 in reserve. Why aren't we spending another 90 grand and doing whatever we can down there because of economies of scale? We're already spending, do you know what I'm saying? 95,000. I mean,
Question.
because I think they stopped like right in front of the bakery, but that whole road all the way to Route 14 needs to be done. And I'm like, look, I can't. If we're doing it
Remember,
and
though,
we're
he
there,
didn't- Remember though, he didn't include any sidewalk or any curb, which
Yeah.
probably gonna be solved.
Well, yeah, no, I get it.
And I'm just taking a guess here, is that the substructure was done, like, he's
Yeah.
going to where the substructure was already done when Air Street was, when the downtown redevelopment was done.
When it was redeveloped, when they reconstructed it.
I'm gonna guess, but
Yeah, it's out there if we have.
But Jay, I can get an answer for you.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Okay.
because I was just looking
Yeah.
at that map, I swear.
Sumner's ending at the crosswalks because
Yeah.
of the proposed
Correct.
construction.
No, I'm talking about what's the street in front of the
Brainerd-
bakery.
Brainerd's going to the alleys just because that was the most logical
Right, so
terminus at
Brainerd
that time.
ending at the alley in front of the bakery, that's a shit show. Excuse my language. That is really bad.
Yeah,
They can put the stopgap in there.
And that was redone when they did Route 14, when they did Air Street.
And-
So just to help out, I'll ask
Sorry,
Gary,
excuse my
and I'll-
language again.
No, that's fine. You're a passionate person.
No, that's-
We'll ask Gary,
Yeah.
get his answers back as to why he chose that,
Sure,
or
sure.
what it would be to add to it, and then I'll send that around.
Well, I mean, it's just gonna look bad for us stopping right there when we could go another 60 feet.
We
to
could
the-
we could either supplement that with stopgap, or we can see the initial thing was to bring that before council, as something to do in that first year when we didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
It was what is the most cost effective way to get Air Street done and determine some sort of logical termini. And the logical termini on Brainerd Street was at the alley, because this was a what's the without going straight to the intersections, what's the next logical termini? And that was decided for that to try to keep the cost to some sort of a reasonable amount, like
Sure.
650,000. So
It's 605,
yeah,
and I know that we needed, hold on, we got 900, we raised and look, I'm just trying to get stuff done.
Yeah.
We raised $960,000. It's 605. You need how much for a reserve?
With the first bond,
Yeah.
900,000.
No, but you said that we need money off the first one, we need a couple $100,000 off the first one for that initial $1 million of the bond.
We would need at least $900,000 in reserve.
Okay. So
So-
technically, we could,
I think
To
he's
carry
saying
over
that
But we
with
have
the seed
another,
funds.
we have another, almost a full year
Right.
coming
right.
on top of that.
I'm simply saying, why not spend
More.
750,000 instead of 605,000 and do more there?
Like I said, we
Right
can
up
ask
front.
Gary and
Yeah.
then have him retool the numbers.
Yeah.
So
no complaints.
if we're going with that, then we need to do something with those pavers in the intersection then.
Well, yeah, go to cement, just go to cement with an imprint.
Let's just, yeah,
Spend it all today, guys.
I'm just saying, I don't know, is that was part, I don't know if that was gonna be the part of the next thing, because I knew I mentioned at city council
So
about
That could be
that.
something
on that, we're looking in 26. Now, we're looking just to get a direction.
Yeah.
And you got some valid points. So do you.
Yeah.
But as far as the concrete pavers, I believe your original comment was to do the concrete pavers in the intersection. The concrete there isn't very bad and.
No, I'm talking about the brick part,
The
up
ribbon.
it.
Right. The brick
Yeah.
part of it, yeah. According to
Concrete's
Gary.
not bad in the intersection.
So according to Gary's original assessment is it wasn't that bad yet. But again, it's something that we could potentially kick off for 2026 when we have a lot more funds and a lot more ability to do things, and then go and do not just a few of them, but just get them all done.
And we do have some funds set aside every year to be resetting those pavers. So, we have somebody come in and reset a few of them. The idea behind doing all this stuff, getting the road is the most important thing.
Right.
Those ribbon pavers we can do a year or two down the road and just try to reset those. But for right now, to try to just get something done, to get the bid out when it needs to get out, it's majorly the
But
milling surface.
can I direct you to look into how much that really is gonna cost doing, uplifting the true brick pavers to putting concrete in that area and just stamping it?
I forgot.
Just looking at the price thing, can I have you do that?
Yeah, well, it will put it as like a secondary priority, or second priority.
And then speaking with that, going with that one crosswalk in the street down by, is it Washington, wherever the old, the last streetscape got started?
Mhm.
That one little concrete section, that big chunk, do we have any money in this budget year where we can fix that? Like you said, you could put something in there, you could put concrete yourself in. What?
Are you talking about Park or Washington?
Yeah, Park, might be Park.
Yes, we can do some sort of a hydraulic cementer in there to,
Okay, can I direct staff to have that, if we have the money this fiscal year to get that done?
we can do that out of operating budget.
Yeah, yeah,
That's, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, there we go.
thank you.
Gary can do an alternate bid on Air Street to include those you're talking about the crosswalks in the intersections, correct? The actual crosswalks.
For that one, the other one is, because the crosswalks aren't as bad as the.
He's talking
diamonds are
about
the ones that are bad.
diamond ribbon in
Those
the
are the ones that
center
get
of
bad.
the concrete.
So you're not talking about the brick crosswalks?
No.
The
The
diamond
crosswalks
brick.
are pretty good.
yeah.
It's the center of the road.
It's the
where it gets
diamond
bad.
brick in the center of the road of the intersections.
Why would that go bad?
They're sinking.
Because every year they do.
The pavers
They
sink.
have to, do you have to do work every year?
So we don't have to do,
The concrete's
Do
fine.
them on the
we
sidewalks.
don't reset that stuff. So this is
Are you
like the
talking
sidewalks.
about this?
No, he's talking about the diamond right
Back
beneath you.
up. Back up.
Yeah.
That.
Those, the bricks.
Yeah.
So,
So as Deb said, we can ask Gary to do a secondary bid.
Did that already get approved at the 6055?
Yes.
At the last council meeting? So we'll have
That's why
to,
I'm bringing it up now. because-
we'll have to have him get on redoing that then,
there
if
you
he's
go.
gonna let it in March.
So
That
go,
could be
go
part
So
of
it
the
can go back to
concrete.
council.
Right there
Go
is a
down,
big deal.
go down Brainerd in front of the bakery, and you can see, if you stop, if you stop at the alley before the bakery, you're just leaving just a pile of, so that's really bad, but then if you keep going, you'll see it's not in good shape. So I'm
This-
thinking, why not just go ahead and
So
finish?
we'll ask Gary,
Yeah,
get his thoughts and suggestions on that, and then pass it around.
and I guess it's,
I guess since we have new business, and it won't be this year, but look into it as well, these alleyways.
Yeah.
For the business people that have business, you want these storefronts coming in here, it's hard for delivery people to go down those alleys.
was that,
And I
It
know
is-
the mayor's talked about that before.
Yeah, it is.
That's in the
Gary's
TIF.
been
yeah, it's in
involved.
the TIF,
If we do the TIF.
correct.
So I just have two quick wrap-ups. I just want to know, first off, I didn't talk the most during new business, but I will now.
Yeah,
So just as a quick recap regarding the generator for well 9, the bids are going to be going out. We anticipate conclusion of that in March, correct? April?
thanks, Terry.
Yeah. So that'll be happening. I just want to make sure that was out there for everybody. And then the only other thing is, I did interview a grant writer, a contracted grant writer. It's something that we've already put into the budget, which will be discussed on Saturday. But very impressed. They have an 86% success rate, which is particularly high. The nice thing is that they would be under contract, which means that we can bombard them with grant requests.
We're gonna lower his rate, huh?
Well,
If you bump.
but essentially the rate is set for like,
He's 46 after.
the rate is set on the concept of like 3 or 4 major projects, like say in Oslad. But then when it comes to like say Trees Forever grants, hit away. And then it's not just writing the grant, it's also grant management after, which should take the pressure off you two. And you.
We talked about this before.
Yeah.
Getting a grant writer.
But due to some recent developments, we've kind of stepped up our pace trying to investigate. We found out that, and I've got a bid already, which I was going to bring to admin committee to discuss because this will affect everybody. So that's it.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, that was fun.